In a world that constantly glorifies noise, where people speak to be seen and act to be noticed, silence is often misunderstood. Many assume that when a man grows quiet, he withdraws, that his silence is a sign of absence, of emotional detachment, of losing interest. Yet for some men, silence is not a retreat but a gathering of energy. It is not a lack of words, but a depth of reflection. The stillness you see on the surface hides an ocean of thought beneath. When a man falls into silence around someone he deeply feels for, he is not escaping her presence. He is absorbing it. His quiet becomes the space where he processes, contemplates, and connects beyond what words can hold. Silence, in such a man, is not a wall, it is a bridge. It carries awareness from the external world into the internal one. Every moment of stillness allows him to listen, to his own emotions, to the subtle shifts in energy, to the rhythm of another's breath. He pays attention not to respond, but to understand. His stillness is active, alive, and charged with intention. He studies the details others overlook, the tone behind words, the pauses between sentences, the look in someone's eyes when they are unguarded. His quiet presence is not emptiness, it is full of perception. For the man who lives consciously, silence is the foundation of clarity. It is the moment between thought and action where understanding is born. Many people speak from impulse, react from emotion, or act from insecurity. But when a man values silence, he allows space between feeling and expression. He doesn't rush to declare his emotions because he knows that what is real does not need to be forced. He observes the connection as it unfolds naturally. His restraint is not indifference, it is respect. Respect for timing, for energy, for authenticity. Silence becomes his way of protecting something sacred. In a world filled with superficial conversations and empty affirmations, silence is his form of truth. He does not perform affection, he embodies it quietly. When he sits in stillness beside someone, his calmness communicates what language cannot. The mind might seek reassurance in words, but the soul recognizes presence. When a man's energy is grounded, you can feel it even without speech. It's in the way he looks, the way his attention stays fixed, the way his energy doesn't scatter elsewhere. His silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where connection breathes without pressure. There is a difference between silence that hides and silence that reveals. The first one avoids vulnerability, the second one invites it. A man who fears being seen hides behind quietness as a mask, but a man who understands his depth uses silence as a doorway. In his stillness, he faces his emotions. He reflects on what he feels, asks himself what is true, what is illusion, what is projection. He doesn't escape into distractions, he refines his awareness. Such a man transforms silence into discipline. It becomes part of his self-mastery. Through it, he learns how to separate attachment from genuine connection, fantasy from truth, desire from understanding. Silence also teaches him patience. In the calm, he realizes that emotions, like waves, rise and fall. He doesn't need to act on every impulse, nor speak every thought. He knows that words carry power and therefore must be spoken with precision. Many times, his silence is the sign of a man who feels deeply but chooses not to dilute that depth with premature expression. He knows that true connection does not demand constant reassurance. It asks for presence, awareness, and steadiness. His quietness becomes the evidence of emotional maturity, of someone who has learned that not every feeling must be voiced to be real. In the stillness, he begins to understand more than himself. He notices how silence amplifies perception. The world grows clearer. He hears the subtleties in tone, sees the micro-expressions, senses shifts in atmosphere. Silence sharpens his intuition, allowing him to read beyond what is said. He becomes attuned not only to others, but to the energy that flows through every exchange. A man like this doesn't speak to fill space. He speaks when there is alignment between his thoughts and his truth. His silence filters noise, ensuring that when he finally does speak, his words carry the weight of authenticity. Such silence can confuse those who seek constant validation. They may think he is uninterested, distant, or emotionally unavailable. But what they fail to see is that silence is the language of awareness. It is where understanding lives. His quietness doesn't come from neglect, it comes from depth. To him, feelings are not performances. They are experiences to be lived internally before being shared externally. When he looks at someone with that steady gaze, it is not emptiness behind it. It is the depth of presence that no words can imitate. When a man grows silent, he is often listening to his intuition more than to the world. He withdraws not to vanish, but to return with clarity. He takes time to observe what he feels, what he desires, what he fears. He becomes an alchemist of emotion, transforming confusion into understanding through stillness. His silence is his workshop where thoughts are shaped into insight and emotion is tempered into wisdom. He doesn't rush because he knows that what grows slowly is often what lasts. To those who misread him, his silence feels like distance. But to those who sense him, his silence feels like presence. Because silence, in its purest form, is not about the absence of sound, it is about the fullness of awareness. It is the space where the noise of the world fades and truth becomes audible. For such a man, silence is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of understanding. It is where he gathers his truth before expressing it, where he measures his feelings not by intensity but by clarity. Through silence, he reveals the depth of his being, not the emptiness of his distance. When a man feels something beyond the surface, when he is drawn to someone not just with his eyes but with his awareness, his attention transforms. It is no longer casual, no longer scattered or reactive. It becomes deliberate, focused, sacred. Attention is the purest currency of energy, and when he gives it consistently, quietly, without asking for recognition, it is not mere interest, it is devotion in motion. The world may see his actions as subtle, but behind every gesture lies a deeper intention. His attention becomes the reflection of what he values most. For such a man, attention is not about constant pursuit or dramatic display. It is not loud, nor does it seek to impress. It flows naturally like water finding its path. He observes without needing to possess, listens without the urge to reply, and remembers without being told. Every detail matters to him because in those details, he feels connected to something more profound than words can express. The way someone laughs, the phrases they repeat, the things that bring them peace or discomfort, all of this he notices, not to control but to understand. His awareness becomes his way of honoring the connection. To pay attention is to give energy, and energy is life itself. When his focus rests on you, it means his energy does too. He could be surrounded by noise, yet his awareness stays anchored. He remembers what you say in passing. He recalls the tone of your voice, the emotion behind your silence. His devotion is not built on gifts or grand promises. It lives in the small, unspoken gestures that prove he sees beyond the surface. When he listens with his whole being. His eyes do not wander, his mind does not drift. He is fully there, fully aware, fully present. Attention is how he expresses respect. To give someone full attention is to say, "You matter," not with words, but with presence. In a world distracted by screens and noise, his ability to remain focused becomes rare and powerful. He doesn't seek to divide his attention because what he values, he protects. He does not need to speak constantly or declare his feelings openly. His devotion shows through how consistently he is attuned. His awareness follows not from obligation, but from genuine care. He doesn't do it because he has to. He does it because he cannot help but do so. The mind follows what the heart values most. The more he observes, the more he learns. Attention reveals patterns, and patterns reveal truth. Through attention, he begins to understand your nature, the things that inspire you, the things that wound you, the ways you protect yourself from the world. He pays attention not to analyze or judge, but to connect more deeply. His observation becomes a silent form of empathy. He learns to sense your moods before you speak, to recognize your silence as communication, to feel when your energy shifts even slightly. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is awareness transformed into care. When attention deepens into devotion, it becomes effortless. He does not need to remind himself to care. Care has already become his nature. He does not ask for something in return. The act of noticing itself brings him fulfillment. Devotion is never about possession. It is about alignment. His attention aligns with what resonates with his soul. He gives not because he wants to take, but because giving attention feels natural, grounding, real. It is how he channels his emotional energy without losing balance. Attention also reveals his discipline. In the same way a monk practices mindfulness, he practices awareness in connection. He trains his mind to be still, his focus to be sharp, his perception to be clear. When he is around you, he is not half present, distracted by thoughts of somewhere else. He is rooted in the moment. Every word, every expression, every silence becomes a lesson, a reflection. His devotion is not something he announces, it is something he practices through constancy. He values depth over display, meaning over motion. There is a calm power in the way he pays attention. It carries no urgency, no impatience, no desperation. It is steady and grounded, like the earth supporting everything without needing acknowledgement. He observes not because he wants to find flaws, but because he wishes to understand how energy flows between two souls. He knows that attention, when given consciously, becomes the highest form of connection. It allows him to move beyond superficial attraction into true awareness. In his attention, there is care. In his care, there is discipline. And in that discipline, there is devotion. Devotion not expressed through words or gestures alone, but through awareness itself. He may not say much, yet he will always notice when something shifts. He may not react loudly, but he adjusts his actions quietly to bring comfort, ease, or harmony. His attention becomes his way of saying, I see you. Not just the image you show to the world, but the energy you carry, the thoughts you hide, the essence that moves beneath your surface. To him, attention is sacred because it mirrors the art of mindfulness. What he attends to, he nourishes. Where his awareness goes, energy grows. And so, when he consistently gives attention, he is nurturing connection at its root. He invests not in temporary pleasure, but in presence. Every time he listens deeply, observes patiently, and remembers thoughtfully, he strengthens the invisible thread between his spirit and another's. This is the kind of devotion that does not fade with time, because it is not built on impulse, it is grounded in awareness. Many misunderstand devotion as attachment, but true devotion is freedom. Attention allows him to love without clinging, to care without controlling, to feel deeply without losing balance. It is through awareness that he learns to love wisely. His devotion flows through attention that asks for nothing in return, because it is not seeking validation. It is expressing truth. His devotion is not found in the intensity of his words, but in the consistency of his awareness. He notices, remembers, adjusts, protects, and respects, all through the quiet practice of attention. Every moment he chooses to be fully present, he is silently declaring what matters most to him. His attention becomes the language of his devotion, a form of connection deeper than words, quieter than promises, stronger than desire. It is how he gives without taking, how he expresses without speaking, how he loves without announcing. In his awareness lies his offering, in his stillness lies his sincerity, and in his attention lies the unspoken devotion that words will never be able to capture. Long before a word is spoken, before a confession is made, before intention is voiced, energy begins to move. It is the unseen language of connection, the silent rhythm that reveals what the mind has not yet accepted. When a man begins to feel deeply for someone, his energy shifts before his words ever catch up. His tone changes, his focus adjusts, his attention lingers longer than it should. There is a quiet transformation happening beneath the surface, one that cannot be hidden, controlled, or disguised. Energy speaks through presence, through vibration, through the way someone shows up without even realizing it. The truth is that energy never lies. The body might stay still, the mouth might stay closed, but energy reveals everything. When a man feels drawn to someone, it is not just emotional, it is energetic. His awareness begins to orbit around that person. He might act the same outwardly, but his energy no longer feels neutral. His attention becomes magnetized, his thoughts become more focused, his actions more intentional. What once felt ordinary now holds weight. This shift is often subtle at first. A longer glance, a softer tone, a quiet stillness when that person enters the room. Yet over time, it becomes undeniable. We live in a world where people rely on words to understand others, yet words are often the slowest form of communication. Energy, on the other hand, moves instantly. It is the intuition that makes you turn your head at the exact moment someone is looking. It is the warmth that fills a space when two people share genuine resonance. For a man whose emotions run deep but hidden, energy becomes his unspoken messenger. He may never admit his feelings directly, but his body language will whisper it. His energy will gravitate toward the one who stirs his spirit. He may find himself drawn to presence, not out of control, but from a force that feels natural. His awareness becomes more attuned. He begins to sense shifts in mood, tone, or emotion with unusual clarity. It is as if his internal frequency has tuned itself to another's energy. When they are near, his spirit feels alert yet calm, focused yet open. When they are absent, something feels incomplete. These sensations are not imagined, they are energetic realities. The body and spirit are constantly responding to unseen vibrations, adjusting in ways the mind cannot fully comprehend. This kind of energy shift is powerful because it does not depend on intention. It happens naturally, without planning, without words. A man may try to ignore it, distract himself, or reason it away, but energy always finds expression. You can see it in the way his eyes linger when he thinks no one notices, or in how his mood subtly changes depending on another's presence. His gestures soften, his patience grows, his voice takes on a tone that carries warmth instead of formality. Even the rhythm of his breath changes. His energy becomes fluid, responsive, alive. Awareness of energy is a form of maturity. Not everyone feels it. Most people rush through life, numbed by noise, disconnected from their internal world. But the man who lives consciously recognizes that energy speaks louder than expression. He senses when connection deepens, even if no one mentions it. He notices when presence feels magnetic, when silence becomes comfortable, when words are no longer necessary. Energy carries intention long before words declare it. This awareness creates a different kind of communication, one based on feeling, resonance, and subtle understanding. When his energy shifts, he may not even understand why at first. The mind tries to explain what the heart already knows. He finds himself thinking about the other person without effort, feeling concern or curiosity without reason. This is the language of resonance. Two energies align, and the flow begins to build. Sometimes he resists it, fearing vulnerability. Yet energy is not something one can resist forever. The more he suppresses it, the more it intensifies. It becomes visible through his behavior, through the way he responds differently without realizing. It's as if his consciousness bends gently toward what draws it in. Every thought carries vibration, and when emotions become strong, that vibration deepens. It's why presence can feel heavy or light, open or guarded, warm or distant. Energy is the field that wraps around emotion, transmitting what words fail to convey. When he stands near someone he is drawn to, even without touch or conversation, there is a hum between the spaces, a certain awareness. His body relaxes yet feels charged at the same time. He might not say anything, but his presence says everything. Energy becomes the language of truth, while words become the translation that arrives too late. Energy moves through the body like breath, subtle yet constant. You can sense when it shifts because the atmosphere changes. Conversation flows differently. Time feels slower or faster. Silence becomes charged with meaning. When a man feels this kind of shift, he might not even consciously recognize it, but his behavior reveals it. He starts noticing things he never cared about before, remembering little details, protecting your peace without needing to be asked. These are not planned acts, they are energetic responses. Energy always guides action before the mind decides what to do. The more he becomes aware of this inner movement, the more he learns to trust it. Words can be shaped, but energy must be felt. To live consciously is to understand that every interaction is an exchange of vibration. When he gives his energy through attention, presence, or awareness, he is revealing what his heart values. When his energy begins to shift, it is not confusion, it is alignment. Something inside him recognizes familiarity, a sense of home, a resonance that pulls him inward. Energy is not something that can be hidden behind performance. Even when a man tries to act indifferent, the truth of his energy betrays him. His body leans closer, his eyes soften, his tone changes. These are the signs of energy moving before words do. The space between two people begins to feel charged, alive, and unmistakable. He may try to stay composed to maintain boundaries, but energy always communicates on its own timeline. It reveals where the heart has already gone, even when the mind still pretends not to know. Words come after thought, but energy arises before awareness. It is pure instinct, untouched by reasoning. It shows connection not through statements, but through vibration. Every movement, every glance, every silence becomes part of the dialogue that cannot be spoken. When a man's energy shifts, it is the soul's way of confessing what the ego has yet to admit. His words might remain still, but his presence tells the story with a truth that language could never express. Jealousy is one of the most misunderstood emotions. It is often labeled as weakness, insecurity, or immaturity. But when observed through the lens of awareness, jealousy is not always born from the desire to control. It can also emerge from the instinct to protect. When a man feels a deep, quiet connection with someone, his energy begins to guard that space. It is not about owning another person, but about preserving something sacred. His jealousy is not loud or aggressive. It is silent, internal, and often hidden beneath restraint. It is not about claiming territory. It is about valuing presence. To understand this kind of jealousy, one must look beneath the surface. Possession arises from fear of loss, from ego's need to control. Protection, however, arises from care, from reverence for what feels meaningful. When a man's heart begins to open, when his emotions start to attach themselves to something real, the instinct to protect awakens naturally. This is not the same as dominance or control. It is the energy of a guardian. He senses the fragility of connection, how easily it can be disturbed by misunderstanding, by distance, by interference. And so his protective energy rises, not to limit freedom, but to preserve harmony. He may not speak it, but you can see it in his eyes. When someone else draws near, his awareness sharpens. His energy becomes more alert. He notices details, tone, timing, everything that could shift the balance of connection. His body might tense, his silence might grow longer, his presence might become heavier. Not because he doubts the other person's loyalty, but because his emotional energy is engaged. He is no longer indifferent. What once passed by unnoticed now affects him deeply. His attention begins to act as a shield, wrapping around the connection with quiet intensity. The man who feels deeply but lives consciously will not allow jealousy to turn into control. He watches his own emotions as they rise, examines them, studies them. He recognizes the difference between ego and care. The ego says, I must have this person so I feel secure. Awareness says, I value this bond and I wish to protect it from harm. His jealousy, then, is not an attempt to dominate, but a sign that his heart has become invested. It is emotion filtered through mindfulness, a feeling transformed into responsibility. Such jealousy reveals not a lack of confidence, but a depth of attachment. When he values something truly, he becomes sensitive to anything that could threaten it. This is a natural law of energy. What we love, we guard. What we respect, we shelter. When a man's affection matures into something genuine, his protectiveness becomes part of his nature. He begins to notice things not everyone sees. He pays attention to subtle changes, to energies that enter the space between. He becomes watchful, not suspicious but aware. He doesn't confront or accuse. Instead, he adjusts his own energy to maintain balance. There is an invisible difference between jealousy that imprisons and jealousy that protects. One is rooted in fear, the other is guided by awareness. When driven by fear, jealousy seeks control. It suffocates, demands, and limits. When guided by awareness, jealousy creates presence. It strengthens trust through understanding. A conscious man knows that protection does not mean possession. He does not wish to own what he admires. He only wishes to safeguard it from chaos, from dishonor, from anything that might reduce its purity. His jealousy becomes like a silent vow to not let what is precious be taken lightly. In his silence, his protection speaks louder than words. He may not openly express jealousy, but his behavior reveals it. He becomes more attentive, more consistent, more intentional. His energy forms a quiet boundary, a field that says, I care about this. He doesn't fight for attention, he anchors himself in presence. He doesn't compete for validation, he earns trust through steadiness. His jealousy does not push away, it grounds him deeper into commitment. He transforms the rawness of emotion into focus, turning vulnerability into awareness. When a man truly values someone, he cannot help but feel the instinct to protect. It is not just physical protection, it is emotional, spiritual, and energetic. He protects peace. He protects energy. He protects the sacredness of connection from noise and distraction. His jealousy manifests not as anger, but as heightened sensitivity. He notices when something feels off, when attention shifts, when energy around the connection begins to change. It is not insecurity. It is attunement. His awareness becomes sharper because he feels responsible for something that matters deeply to him. In truth, jealousy is a teacher. It reveals where attachment lives, where love begins to bloom, where fear still hides. For the man who walks the path of self-awareness, jealousy becomes a mirror. Through it, he studies his own desires, his own fears, his own capacity to love without control. He learns that the goal is not to eliminate jealousy, but to refine it. To transmute the need for possession into the desire to protect. He realizes that true love cannot coexist with control, but it thrives in the presence of respect. His jealousy then becomes a signal of devotion, not dominance. When he sees someone else approaching what he treasures, he does not react with aggression, he withdraws into stillness. He watches, he evaluates, he feels. His instinct to protect is strong, but his discipline is stronger. He does not let emotion cloud awareness. Instead, he lets awareness guide emotion. He understands that love that is pure cannot be owned. It must be nurtured freely, yet safeguarded wisely. So his jealousy does not imprison. It guards the boundary of what is meaningful. Even when he says nothing, his energy reveals the shift. There is a certain tension in the air, a deeper tone in his voice, a quiet firmness in his gaze. It is not possessiveness. It is recognition. He recognizes the value of what he has found and refuses to let it be diluted by distraction. He may not voice it aloud, but internally, his devotion becomes stronger through this feeling. Jealousy transforms into awareness, awareness into gratitude, gratitude into protection. Such a man does not let jealousy consume him because he has learned to master his emotions rather than be mastered by them. He channels the rawness of feeling into clarity. His energy becomes a guardian, not a prison guard. He does not wish to cage freedom, he wishes to preserve connection. The difference is subtle but profound. Where the unconscious man uses jealousy to dominate, the aware man uses it to deepen understanding. His heart does not scream for possession. It simply moves to defend what feels sacred from carelessness or harm. Jealousy, when purified by awareness, becomes a form of silent love. It is the heart's way of saying, "This matters to me." It is not about ownership, but about reverence. It carries no demand, no force, only quiet vigilance. The energy of protection replaces the impulse of possession. He stands guard not as a controller, but as a caretaker of connection. His jealousy is not noise. It is the whisper of responsibility, the echo of care that asks for nothing more than respect for what he holds dear. When a man feels a deep, genuine connection that touches the core of his being, something subtle yet powerful begins to shift inside him. He no longer sees his journey of growth as something that belongs to him alone. Your presence becomes a mirror, a compass, a quiet force that influences how he moves through the world. It is not about dependency or the need to impress. It is about inspiration. A silent motivation begins to rise from within. He starts to evolve, not because he is told to, but because your energy awakens the parts of him that wish to rise higher. Your presence becomes his reminder that he can be more, that he can refine his discipline, his focus, his purpose. Growth becomes an act of devotion, not performance. He begins to examine his life differently. The areas where he once settled now call for improvement. The habits he once ignored suddenly stand in his awareness like lessons waiting to be learned. This transformation is not forced. It is natural. It happens quietly, beneath the surface of ordinary days. When he sees the reflection of strength, grace, or depth in someone else, he feels compelled to meet that vibration with his own evolution. He begins to understand that connection is not about comfort. It is about alignment. It is about two energies rising together, each pushing the other toward clarity and balance. In your presence, he learns the art of self-awareness. He starts to observe how he reacts, how he speaks, how his emotions flow. He becomes conscious of how his energy affects the atmosphere. This awareness is growth in motion. It is not about changing to please. It is about refining to resonate. When a man truly values someone, he wants his energy to bring peace, not chaos. He wants his presence to contribute, not to take. Your calmness makes him want to master his restlessness. Your stability encourages him to build his own foundation. Your depth reminds him to move beyond the surface of life. The growth he seeks is not about achievement or external success. It is inner cultivation. It is about becoming more disciplined, more mindful, more grounded. He begins to spend more time in silence, reflecting instead of reacting. He learns to control his impulses, to listen more deeply, to speak with intention. The connection he feels becomes his spiritual training ground. It is where his ego softens, where patience grows, where love becomes a teacher instead of an emotion. Through this process, he realizes that presence can transform character. The energy you hold becomes the atmosphere in which he matures. He might not speak about it, but you can sense it. His actions start to shift. He becomes more consistent, more centered, more aware of time and energy. The distractions that once pulled him easily no longer have the same power. He becomes protective of his focus because he knows that growth requires attention. In your presence, he feels the difference between what drains him and what expands him. He learns to choose the path that nurtures his potential rather than the one that numbs it. Every moment of awareness becomes an act of alignment. When a man aligns his growth with another's presence, it does not mean he loses himself. It means he becomes more of who he truly is. He begins to understand that love and evolution are not separate paths, they are the same movement of energy. The more he grows, the more he can give. The more he refines his being, the more his presence becomes healing rather than heavy. He learns that to stand beside something pure, he must rise to the same frequency. His growth becomes a silent expression of gratitude for what inspires him. There is a deep humility in this process. He does not grow out of competition or comparison, but out of reverence. He sees that your strength is not a challenge to his, but an invitation. Your wisdom is not something to rival, but something to learn from. He studies without asking questions, learns without seeking praise. In quiet ways, he starts shaping his discipline, his habits, his thoughts to align with the vibration that your presence brings. He begins to see that connection is not about sameness, it is about synchronization. Two different energies finding a rhythm that brings balance to both. The man who aligns his growth with another's presence begins to live differently. He starts to treat time as sacred, energy as precious, and awareness as strength. He removes what no longer serves his peace because he begins to understand that growth is not about addition. It is about purification. He releases distractions, doubts, and habits that cloud his clarity. He becomes selective not from arrogance, but from understanding that every choice shapes energy. The more he refines his awareness, the more harmonious his connection becomes. In the space between two people, there is always an invisible exchange of energy. When that space holds genuine connection, it becomes fertile ground for growth. A man who recognizes this sees that the presence of another can act as a mirror, showing him not only what he admires, but also what he must heal. He confronts his own shadows, not to hide them, but to transform them. Your presence reflects both his light and his unfinished lessons. He learns to face them with courage, not shame. This is how awareness matures, through reflection and transformation. Growth aligned with presence is spiritual discipline disguised as affection. It teaches him patience when emotion wants to rush, strength when fear wants to retreat, clarity when confusion rises. It teaches him that love is not something to chase, but something to become. Every step he takes toward balance is a way of saying, without words, that your energy awakens something higher in him. He starts to honor his body, his mind, and his spirit because he wants his vibration to match what he admires. He wants his presence to contribute harmony, not turbulence. He begins to understand that growth is not measured by achievement, but by peace. The more he grows inwardly, the calmer his energy becomes. The less he reacts, the more he understands. His devotion to becoming better is not about seeking approval. It is about creating alignment. He learns that true connection thrives only when both energies evolve. His growth is not for appearance, it is for resonance. He wishes to stand in a space where his energy does not take from yours, but adds to it. A man who aligns his growth with another's presence realizes that transformation is not a destination. It is a constant practice. He accepts the discomfort that comes with change. He embraces silence, reflection, and humility. He lets your presence serve as his mirror and his measure, not to imitate but to elevate. He starts walking the path of balance, where his outer discipline mirrors his inner peace. Every day becomes an opportunity to grow into the kind of man whose energy can stand beside grace without disturbing it. And through this alignment, his growth becomes not an effort, but a way of being. There are moments in life when presence itself becomes medicine. When someone's energy quiets the noise in your mind without needing to speak, when your breath unconsciously slows, when the weight you've been carrying suddenly feels lighter. For a man who moves through the world with discipline, pressure, and purpose, calmness does not come easily. His mind is often occupied, his energy always in motion, his focus sharpened by responsibility. But when he meets a presence that brings him peace, his spirit begins to soften. The restlessness that once drove him starts to settle. It is not submission. It is alignment. His spirit comes around you, not because you take away his strength, but because your energy reminds him of balance. In your presence, the noise of his inner world begins to fade. The need to prove, to perform, to protect all falls quiet. He does not feel the urge to impress. He feels the desire to breathe. His thoughts slow down, his energy becomes lighter, and his awareness deepens. It is not about attraction alone. It is about resonance. Some energies do not collide, they harmonize. When your vibration holds peace, it calls forth that same peace within him. His soul recognizes it before his mind does. The calmness he feels is not forced. It is the natural rhythm that emerges when truth meets truth. This stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness without chaos. It is a state where the masculine finds balance in the presence of the feminine, not through dominance or surrender, but through harmony. When his spirit calms around you, he feels safe to be unguarded. The armor he wears in the world begins to dissolve, not because he chooses to drop it, but because it no longer feels necessary. The walls he built for protection soften into transparency. He can exist without defense. This sense of peace is rare for him, for he has learned to survive through control. Yet with you, control feels irrelevant. Presence replaces it. Awareness takes its place. Calmness in his spirit does not mean passivity. It means centeredness. It means he is no longer pulled in 1,000 directions. His energy, once scattered, begins to gather itself. He feels whole, not because something was added to him, but because your energy reflects back what he has forgotten within himself. You do not calm him by trying. Your stillness becomes a mirror that reminds him of his own stillness. You do not heal him through effort. You remind him of his own capacity to be grounded. In that reminder, something ancient within him relaxes. He begins to remember who he is beneath the noise. His body responds before his mind does. His breathing changes, slow, steady, natural. His posture softens, his eyes carry less tension. He no longer feels the need to analyze or predict. Time feels slower when you are near, not because minutes change, but because awareness expands. Presence stretches each moment into eternity. The space between words feels alive. He begins to listen with more than his ears. He listens with his whole being. In that stillness, he feels peace. Not the peace that comes from control, but the peace that arises from release. There is something sacred in the energy that calms another soul. It is not manipulation. It is resonance. You do not quiet his spirit by doing anything. You quiet it by being. Your groundedness becomes an anchor. Your silence becomes understanding. Your presence becomes the space where his restless thoughts can rest. He feels seen without judgment, valued without demand, understood without explanation. The calm he feels is the effect of being met by energy that does not compete, compare, or chase. It simply exists, and in that existence, his spirit finds rest. The man who has learned to fight through life rarely knows what it means to be still. His spirit has been conditioned to strive, to chase, to endure. But calmness is what his soul has always longed for. When he meets someone who holds peace effortlessly, he recognizes it as something he once lost along the way. Your presence becomes his reflection, a reminder that strength does not always roar, that stability can be soft, that silence can carry more truth than words. His nervous system begins to adjust, his emotions begin to settle, and his awareness begins to expand. He experiences balance not as an idea, but as a felt reality. He starts to seek stillness more often, not because he needs it to function, but because he feels it guiding his energy. The more time he spends in that vibration, the more he learns to recreate it within himself. He starts waking with a quieter mind, breathing more consciously, moving more intentionally. Your presence teaches him through energy, not instruction. He realizes that calmness is not something to be found outside, but something to be remembered within. His spirit begins to practice peace instead of chasing intensity. There is a purity in how his energy changes. It becomes slower, more deliberate, more aware. The need to rush fades, replaced by patience. The desire to control outcomes lessens, replaced by trust. The constant motion that once defined him begins to transform into grounded focus. He realizes that true power is not in movement, but in stillness. That peace is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of energy. Through your presence, he learns that calmness is not weakness. It is balance in motion. It is the kind of strength that doesn't shout, the kind that endures. The energy between two conscious beings creates a field that cannot be seen but can always be felt. Within that field, emotions transform, thoughts clear, and spirits heal. When his energy enters that field of calm, he feels alignment. His restlessness doesn't vanish. It dissolves into awareness. His tension doesn't disappear. It transforms into clarity. You become, unknowingly, the space where he can breathe, where his own energy can return to its natural rhythm. The more he feels this peace, the more he values it, protects it, and learns to sustain it. His calmness around you is not dependence. It is remembrance. It is his soul remembering what it feels like to be whole, to be grounded, to be fully alive without fear. You do not give him peace, you remind him of it. You simply reflect what already exists within him, but has been buried beneath layers of chaos, effort, and striving. Around you, his spirit rediscovers equilibrium. His energy stops reaching outward for validation and begins to flow inward toward balance. What he feels is not ordinary comfort. It is deep alignment, a silent harmony between his inner world and yours. The more he connects with that vibration, the more his actions begin to reflect it. He speaks with more patience, moves with more grace, and listens with more empathy. His spirit grows quieter not because he loses intensity, but because intensity no longer controls him. The calmness becomes his teacher, showing him that love, peace, and presence are not separate forces. They are one continuous current that flows through awareness itself. And in that awareness, his restless spirit finds its center again,